8 right now, something massive is happening behind closed doors that the 24-hour news cycle is completely ignoring. While everyone is focused on the missiles and the headlines out of Tehran, the real story is a quiet, high-stakes financial war brewing between Washington and its oldest allies. A $6 trillion relationship is on the brink of collapse, and if you aren't watching the money, you're missing the entire war. What I'm watching unfold right now is far bigger than the headlines most people are getting. The public conversation is trapped at the visible layer: missile strikes, drone attacks, oil spikes, and the panic around the Strait of Hormuz. Those are serious developments, but they are not the core of the story. Underneath all of that, a much more dangerous fracture is taking shape. The real crisis is financial, strategic, and potentially historic in scale. America's most important Gulf partners, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar, are now confronting a question that could reshape global power. How much damage are they expected to absorb for Washington before they decide the partnership is no longer worth the cost? That question is no longer theoretical. According to reporting from the Financial Times, these 4 states have begun a formal reassessment of their U.S. investment exposure. They are reportedly studying legal pathways to reduce, suspend, or unwind commitments, including the use of force majeure provisions, contract clauses designed for moments when extraordinary events make normal obligations impossible or irrational to maintain. Let that sink in. We are not talking about rival powers looking to punish the United States. We are talking about allies. These are the same governments that pledged enormous capital flows into the American economy in 2025. Their money has supported U.S. real estate, major tech bets, treasury demand, and long-term strategic confidence. Now, instead of expanding that relationship, they are examining how to protect themselves from it. Over the next several minutes, I want to break down how this happened. We're going to trace the escalation from February 28th and explain how a military alliance began turning into a financial standoff, because this is no longer just a security crisis. This is the early stage of a potential capital rupture, unlike anything Washington has faced from its own partners. Before we get into it, subscribe to Daily Brief and turn on notifications. The goal here is simple: go beyond the noise and explain the deeper mechanics that mainstream coverage keeps skimming past. This story is moving fast, and if you wait for the television panels to catch up, you'll already be behind. So, let's start with the date everything changed. February 28, 2026. That was the day the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a sweeping air assault targeting Iran's military infrastructure, nuclear facilities, and top leadership. The objective was decisive shock. The response was immediate. Tehran struck back at once, but crucially, not only against the countries that launched the attack. Iran also targeted the Gulf states hosting U.S. military assets. And that is where the strategic miscalculation became impossible to ignore. Saudi Arabia, the Kuwait, and Qatar were not the architects of this campaign. By multiple counts, they had urged de-escalation. They wanted diplomacy first, not a regional firestorm. Yet once the operation began, they were dragged into the consequences anyway. In Iranian strategic logic, hosting American bases was enough to make them part of the battlefield. That single assumption transformed the Gulf from partner to casualty. The fallout was immediate and multi-layered. Start with the It has reportedly absorbed hundreds of ballistic missiles and well over 1,000 drone attacks. Interception systems prevented the worst-case scenario, but not everything was stopped. Fires broke out. Near Dubai, military facilities in Abu Dhabi took damage, and one of the most alarming incidents involved a strike affecting an Amazon Web Services data facility, potentially the first major cloud infrastructure target seriously damaged in an active regional war. If that detail holds, the implications go far beyond physical destruction. It raises new questions about digital sovereignty, cyber resilience, and whether data infrastructure is now fully part of the modern battlefield. Kuwait has been hit as well, with repeated strikes disrupting Mina al-Ahmadi, one of the region's most important refining assets. The shutdown of hundreds of thousands of barrels per day is not just a local industrial problem. It tightens supply, distorts price expectations, and signals that even heavily protected energy systems are vulnerable under sustained pressure. Then there is Qatar, where the impact may be even more profound. Early missile waves reportedly hit Ras Laffan, the largest LNG export hub in the world. Damage assessments suggest recovery could stretch out for years. Qatar Energy moved to declare force majeure and suspend output. Because Qatar supplies a major share of Europe's natural gas demand, the consequences were immediate. European gas prices surged, supply planners went into emergency mode, and what looked at first like a Middle East conflict suddenly became an economic shockwave for the entire European industrial base. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, faced attacks on the beating heart of its oil network. The strike on Ras Tanura was especially significant. This is not just another refinery. It is one of the most important energy nodes on the planet, tied directly to the capacity of Saudi Aramco, one of the largest and most strategically important companies in the world. Additional pressure on Yanbu and Jubail only amplified the damage. Once markets understood that multiple pillars of Gulf energy infrastructure were exposed, crude surged past $114 a barrel. That price spike is not just an energy story. It is a political one, especially in the United States. Donald Trump built much of his appeal on the promise of lower costs and economic relief. If energy prices stay elevated, that promise becomes harder to defend. And with elections approaching, rising fuel costs do not behave like abstract macroeconomic indicators, they hit voters directly every single week at the pump. Now add the Strait of Hormuz to that equation. This is the most important maritime choke point in global energy trade, and Iran has effectively made it hostile territory for U.S. and Western-linked shipping. More than 100 vessels have reportedly been delayed or stranded. That matters not only because of oil, but because Hormuz is also critical for the movement of petrochemicals, industrial feedstocks, fertilizer components, and broader trade flows that influence food production worldwide. That means the economic damage is no longer confined to Gulf exporters or Western consumers. It starts feeding into global inflation, food supply vulnerability, airline logistics, manufacturing inputs and sovereign budgeting, grounded flights in Dubai, market losses in Riyadh, emergency repairs in Kuwait, interrupted LNG in Qatar. This is the invoice for a war these governments never wanted but are now expected to carry. And that brings us to the most important part of the story, why the threat of capital withdrawal is credible. These countries are not just oil producers parking cash abroad. They have spent years reinventing themselves as safe, modern platforms for finance, tourism, logistics, innovation, sports, and luxury development. Their long-term strategy depends on one thing above all else: stability, their national branding, their foreign investment campaigns, their mega-projects, their diversification plans. All of it rests on the perception that the Gulf is secure, investable, and insulated from permanent conflict. A regional war destroys that message almost overnight. That is why the anger is now spilling into the open. Influential figures in the Gulf are no longer speaking in the quiet language of diplomatic discomfort. They are openly questioning why Washington's choices have imposed such heavy costs on countries that neither approved the operation nor benefited from it. Behind closed doors, the message appears even sharper. Why should Gulf capital continue underwriting an American partnership that leaves Gulf cities, infrastructure, and balance sheets exposed? This is where the numbers become difficult to ignore. Gulf sovereign wealth funds collectively control an extraordinary share of global state-backed capital. Their total exposure runs into the trillions, if only a modest percentage of that money is redirected away from the United States out of treasuries, out of commercial property, out of private equity, out of strategic venture holdings. The consequences would be enormous. Treasury demand weakens. Borrowing costs rise. Mortgage rates face additional pressure. Real estate liquidity tightens. Strategic American sectors lose patient foreign capital. Even if the shift begins gradually, markets would understand the message. Immediately, key U.S. partners are no longer treating the American relationship as economically risk-free. There are several ways this can go from here. The first is symbolic but still serious. Gulf states pause new commitments, quietly delay deals, and use capital hesitation as a warning shot. That would be the diplomatic equivalent of putting Washington on notice. The second is more structural, a slower but sustained reallocation away from U.S. assets. That would not look dramatic on day one, but over time it would weaken confidence in the dollar system, raise financing costs, and signal that the U.S. security umbrella no longer guarantees financial loyalty. The third scenario is the one Washington really cannot afford: a break that spills into defense. If major Gulf buyers start canceling or reducing contracts with American defense firms, the impact would be immediate: lost revenue, lost jobs, weakened production lines, and a serious challenge to the industrial ecosystem that underpins U.S. military influence. And hanging over all of this is China. Beijing has every reason to watch this carefully. It depends heavily on Gulf energy flows, so it wants stability. But it also recognizes opportunity when it sees one. If Gulf governments conclude that Washington has become too costly, too unpredictable, or too strategically reckless, China will be ready with an alternative framework: infrastructure, trade, technology, investment absorption, and political engagement without the same security entanglements. That is how regional crises become civilizational turning points. Not in one dramatic announcement, but through slow reallocations of trust, money, and strategic alignment. The center of all this is a simple truth. Military power and financial power are inseparable. You cannot ignite a conflict around the world's most important energy corridor and assume your allies will absorb the collateral damage indefinitely. If Washington failed to model the economic blowback, then it also failed to understand the political breaking point of the states expected to bear it. At some stage, allies stop explaining. They start repricing the relationship. And that may be exactly what we are seeing now. So this is the real story behind the spectacle. Not just missiles, not just oil, not just war. This is a test of whether America's Gulf partners still believe the alliance serves their future or whether they've started calculating the cost of walking away. If they are, then what comes next is not a temporary diplomatic dispute. It is a global reordering of capital, influence, and power. Share this with anyone still stuck on the surface-level narrative. Subscribe to Daily Brief if you want analysis that looks beneath the headline and into the system underneath it. And let me leave you with the real question. Are the Gulf states acting prudently by protecting themselves now, or are they about to trigger an even larger instability by pulling financial support out from under the system that helped build the current order? And when this chapter closes, who will ultimately have paid the highest price?